We're live. I think we are live. And we're gonna be sleep streaming, so I'm gonna go to sleep. And if you see my PNG, which is that has like me sleeping on a bed, that means I'm going to bed. Here we go.
built a music synthesizer in 24 hours, and it's kind of overpowered. It's got 7 built-in effects, multiple voices, and even motion-controlled filters. But how did I actually build this? First, get a microcontroller, buttons and knobs, and an accelerometer. And after building your circuit, it's time to code. But writing code for audio tech is not easy. So that's why today I'm using Cursor. What would have become a week of coding became 10 minutes of iteration, and the code works amazing. AI is breaking barriers for people who want to design cool tech. So if I were you, I would definitely give Cursor a shot for your next project. Peace!
Today, we're going to be recapping all of the coolest features that got added to BandLab in 2025. The next feature on our list is one that I think is super interesting and one that I think could be a game changer for any of you who are newer to production. Wow, it honestly amazes me how well that works. They're so simple. I really believe all of these new tools that they added make such a massive difference. What's up, BandLab? My name is Coleman, and today I'll walk you through building a track in BandLab Mobile, highlighting all of the features added in 2025. So now let's jump into BandLab. And the first tool we're going to talk about that was added this year is BandLab's AI Voice Cleaner. So now to demonstrate, we'll first record in a vocal. So now let's record a vocal in so we can demonstrate the AI Voice Cleaner. You and me and you and me, oh, you and me and you and me, oh. And this is a perfect take to demonstrate the AI Voice Cleaner because we had an airplane going overhead while we were recording the vocal. So you'll hear it in our take. If I play it back, you'll hear that background noise. And you and me, oh, you and me and you and me. Oh. So now we're going to use that AI Voice Cleaner to get rid of all of that background noise. So we'll click on our vocal, click AI, click Voice Cleaner, and now we have the option to remove the noise, de-reverb, and auto EQ. So the noise remover, it's going to get rid of that airplane noise and any other background noise going on. And then the de-reverb is really nice because my room is not treated just like so many other people's. So it's going to get rid of those early reflections that happen from singing in an untreated room. And then our auto EQ is just going to help balance our vocals for us and give us a better starting point to add vocal chains. So I'll click apply. So now that the voice cleaner is applied, let's hear how our vocal sounds. You and me and you and me, oh, you and me and you and me, oh. Wow, it honestly amazes me how well that works. The airplane noise is completely gone, the reflections from my room gone, and it balanced the EQ so that we have a really nice starting place for the rest of our processing. Next up is we got new auto pitch modes. So now we'll go in and apply the auto pitch to our vocal, and you'll see we have a massive variety of tuning options for our vocal. And each one of these options is just gonna give our vocal a different sound, texture, or even harmony. And so having all of these auto pitch modes just gives us a massive variety with how we're gonna have our vocal sound. Let's just flick through a few different auto pitch modes to give you an idea of what they can do to our vocals. So now we're gonna go into auto pitch, enable it by turning our knob on to our desired amount, then select our key, which in this case is going to be E flat major. And then now we can audition the different auto pitch modes. And here in 2025, we have so many different options when it comes to the different modes we can use on our vocals. So let's try out a few different ones. Here's classic. And me, and you, and me, oh, you. Or we could use one of my favorite modes, which is natural. You, and me, and you, and me, oh. Or we could use the telephone mode, which is super cool and gives us that classic telephone sound. You, and me, and you, and me. And another one of my favorite auto pitch modes is Apple X. It gives us this really cool harmony effect. You, and me, and you, and me, oh. And another really cool auto pitch mode is Gorgon. You and me and you and me, oh. So I'm going to select natural and move on to the next feature. The next feature on our list is one that I think is super interesting and one that I think could be a game changer for any of you who are newer to production. So without further ado, number 3, we've got BandLab's AI preset generator. And so how this works is we can write a prompt and it'll create us an effects chain that will transform our sound how we tell it to. So now we're gonna go in and write a prompt for it to create us a vocal chain. We're gonna use BandLab's new AI preset generator to create our vocal chain for us. So we're gonna go into our effects and select generate with prompt. So now we can type how we want our vocal to sound and let BandLab create our vocal chain for us. Give me a clean, compressed, and lush vocal sound. Click generate. And now this is what our vocal sounds like with the effects chain it created for us.
You and me and you and me. Oh, you and me and you and me. Oh.
So that sounds like a really good starting place, but then I think we could take it a step further and use some of the new one knob plugins that BandLab added this year. So I'm going to add Room, which is a really cool new reverb plugin with just one knob. So I'll click play and turn this up until it sounds good.
You and me and you and me. Oh, you and me and you and me. Oh.
So I think that sounds awesome, and I'm honestly super impressed by how well the AI preset generator works. Now let's move on to the next feature. So now we have a vocal that's cleaned, tuned, and processed. Next, we're gonna use BandLab's AI voice changer to add a really cool double to our vocal. So I'll select our vocal, select AI, then I'm gonna select voice changer, and now we can use this to double our vocal with a completely new voice. And so I think it'd be really cool if we had a female double on the song, so we can go and try some of the different voices out. So I'll click play on Ocean Muse.
You and me and you and me and you.
And then we can use this to bring the vocal up an octave. So now we're doubling it with a female voice that's also a high. I'm gonna click apply. So now we have our high, which sounds like this.
You and me and you and me. Oh, you and me and you and me. Oh.
And then if I layer that with my original vocal, we get this.
You and me and you and me. Oh, you.
Next up, we're gonna highlight my favorite plugins that got added to BandLab this year. So to demonstrate what these new plugins are, how they work, and more importantly, how they sound, we'll add a few elements in one by one and process them with these new plugins. So first, we're gonna go into BandLab Sounds and add a chord progression to go below our vocal. And what's really cool about BandLab Sounds is they're always adding new packs. So we have so many new packs that got added this year. So let's go ahead and choose a chord progression from a newer pack. Now that we have our sample added in, we need to transpose it up 6 semitones to match the key of our vocals. Now it sounds like this.
You and me and you and me. Oh.
Now let's go to the effects and add some different plugins to make it fit our song better. So I'll go into effects. Then I'm going to use the leveler one knob to add some compression to our piano.
And me and you and me. Oh. You and me and you and me. Oh.
What I think is so cool about these one knob plugins is they're so simple. I just turn it up until it sounds how I want it to, and then we're done. We move on. Then we can use the visual EQ just to cut out some of the lows on the piano to make space for our bass.
And me and you and me. Oh. You.
Then we can also use a high shelf on our visual EQ just to make a little bit of space on the top end for our vocal.
And me. Oh. You and me.
Next, we're gonna add a bass to our song, and to do so, we'll go into BandLab's instruments, and then here we can choose our preset. And just like we did in BandLab Sounds, we're always getting new presets for all the various instruments in BandLab. So let's go through and pick one of the newer bass presets that was added this year. So to add our bass in, we'll click plus, select virtual instruments, then slide over to synth basses. Then let's select one of the new synth bass presets that was added this year. So AKA Bass is one of my favorite bass presets that got added this year, so I'm gonna add that in. And what's really cool about this preset is it gives us a lot of cool ways to customize the sound of our bass. So now let's record in our bass pattern.
You and me and you and me. Oh,
Then we can use the Bassy 1 knob to really thicken up our bass.
and me and you and me. Oh,
Then we can add a pumper to sidechain this to the quarter note.
you and me and you and me. Oh,
Next, let's add the drums into our song.
you and me and you and me.
The next feature on our list is going to be BandLab's AI Auto Mix. And what this does is gives us the ability to have BandLab mix our track for us. All we have to do is select the style we want it to be mixed like, and it'll literally just mix the track for us. And from using this feature, I recommend experimenting and trying a few of the different genres out because you might like one more than the other. So now we'll go over and choose one of the 8 style options it gives us to mix our track. So I tend to go towards pop, electronic, or house just because those are commonly the styles of music I'm making. So to demonstrate, let's pick our genre and let BandLab mix our track for us. So for this, I'll select house. And now BandLab is going to mix our track for us. Now this is what our track sounds like after using BandLab's AI Auto Mix.
You and me and you and me. Oh, you and me and you and me. Oh.
So there you have it. That is my recap of all of my favorite features added into BandLab in 2025. And I think it really just goes to show how big of a year it was for BandLab in changing the game for all of the mobile producers out there. I really believe all of these new tools that they added make such a massive difference in the ability for us to create great sounding music using only our phone and a pair of headphones. I really hope this video was inspiring to you, and let me know down in the comments what your favorite feature was that got added this year, and I'll see all of you guys in 2026.
Build apps that scale. Meet Base 44. Prompt it. Foundation set. Structure's good to go. Now, build it up from there. Plug in your integrations. Get exactly what you need the moment you need it. Want to write your own code? Push and pull from GitHub as you go. Own your workflows and environment. When you want that visual impact, drop in any NPM library and watch it come alive. With security built in, keep your data safe every step of the way. Ready? Deploy in one click with full control and zero compromise. Base 44. Build it your way.
Turn complex information into actionable insights with Notebook LM. Upload your own sources and create an interactive knowledge base you can trust. Find insights faster with Google Workspace.
With 2 kids and busy schedules, you gotta find the wins. And Dick's new Scorecard Plus membership is an easy W.
For $99 a year, you get over $350 in benefits.
It pays for itself with $100 in annual bonus rewards, free shipping every day, and more.
And get this, I scored a limited time deal, $100 off Dick's exclusive brands, so everyone can get the style they want. Gear up for their best year yet. Join Scorecard Plus.
Thank you to Jackery for sponsoring this video. So my mom, she lives like 20 minutes if I drive slow, 15 minutes if I'm pushing it from us. And she lives by herself. She has no backup power at her house, none. And I found this out in a very real way, kind of the middle part of last year, when her whole neighborhood lost power for the better part of the day. She called me as she usually does, but not because she knew what to do with herself, but because she was starting to worry about the fridge. And a multi-day outage at her house is not the kind of thing that sort of I wanted her to find out about after the fact. So when Jackery, and thank you to them for sponsoring this video, sent over the Home Power 3600 Plus, I had a very specific person in mind the whole time I was testing this. Someone who is not going to read a manual, someone who needs this to work the first time by herself or himself. And I figured the best way to find out if it could do that was to actually sort of, I don't know how to say this nicely, but just kind of beat on it. So we brought it to the studio to test it on everything we have here. We've got a full-size fridge here, all our camera gear, computers, lights. This thing can keep a production environment running and keep our kitchen running very easily. And it did. Monitors, lights, laptops, all charging simultaneously. I kept waiting for it to complain or give me sort of power surge issues, and it never did. 3,584 watts of capacity, 3,600 watts of continuous output, 7,200 watt surge ceiling for things like compressor motors that need to spike, sort of kick on. In practice, I plugged in everything I could think of, and it just ran it. The physical unit surprised me a little bit. So let me get into it. We talked about these things in the past, but this one is a bit different. First, 77 pounds. So it's not light. But Jackery claims this is the lightest 3.6 kilowatt hour LFP station on the market. So take that for what it's worth. Comparable units, I did the research, so you don't have to, are close to 99 pounds. So, you know, it's heavy, but not as heavy. It also has luggage wheels and a telescoping handle, so if you're rolling it around, it makes it a lot easier not picking it up and carrying it. Moved around the studio without any help, and it was fine. My mom can move it. Again, 70-year-old woman. I'm guessing you could probably move it too, and that matters. It's also, like, it's not gonna win a beauty contest, but it's not ugly, which sounds like a low bar in this category, but it kind of isn't. It parks in a room and doesn't look like a piece of industrial equipment like some of these do. The setup is where this thing earns its place for someone like her. You plug it into charge and the power goes out, you press one button. That's it, press one button and start plugging things in. No installation required. For someone who's going to call me if it does anything unexpected, that makes everything to me. There's a manual transfer switch that can actually back up home circuits if you want something more permanent, but even without that, one button. One thing worth knowing before you buy, the 240 volt output in the specs requires 2 units in parallel. One unit runs at 120 volts, which covers everything most households actually need during an outage. Again, fridge, lights, router, heater, whatever devices you're charging. Just worth knowing ahead of time so there aren't any surprises. Now, the reason this unit handles all of that reliably comes down to something most people skip right past on the spec sheet. The battery chemistry is what separates it from the cheaper options. So lithium iron phosphate. Never heard those words together, but know that it's more thermally stable than the standard lithium ion, which means it's safe to run indoors, no ventilation concerns, no fumes, nothing. You can't say that about a gas generator for sure, and you can't always say it about older lithium ion stations either. 6,000 charge cycles, 10-year rated lifespan, 5-year warranty. These batteries last longer and hold their charge longer too, and for my mom's situation specifically, that's where this thing actually got me. So Jackery calls it zero drain, and the claim is 95% charge retention after sitting for a full year. So charging it up, left it alone for weeks, checked the app, and it lost almost nothing. Now I can't verify the full year claim, but 2 weeks of sitting untouched and it was still basically full. And for someone who charges this up and then doesn't think about it until something goes wrong, that retention is a whole ballgame. Think about the scenario, right? You're not gonna keep your battery packed and charged all the time. Charge it once and put it wherever you're gonna keep it and hope that it's gonna have enough charge when you wanna use it. With this, you don't have to worry about it. I think like the nightmare scenario with any backup device is probably reaching for an emergency and then finding the battery is dead or not as charged as you expect it to be. For my mom, who is most definitely not gonna remember to top this off every few months, who sometimes forgets to charge her phone, that matters more than almost anything else on a spec sheet. And if she ever decides she wants more runway the base unit gives her, there's options for that too. It's expandable, it's up to 21 kilowatt hours with additional battery packs, and 2 units together gets you to 43. Just for perspective, an average house burns through about 30 kilowatt hours a day. So the math on the multi-day coverage starts working pretty fast if you wanted to. Most people don't start there, and they don't need to, but knowing you can grow instead of replacing it. Which brings me to the part everyone's going to ask, the price. MSRP is $2,799. And I'm not gonna pretend that's cheap or nothing. Jackery does run sales regularly, so check the link in the description for current pricing. But here's how I thought about it. Sort of a chest freezer full of food is $300 to $500. One hotel night where the house gets too hot or too cold is another couple hundred. A pipe that bursts because the heat went out is potentially thousands. When I started adding up what a bad outage actually costs versus what this costs, the numbers did make a little bit more sense. When I added in the part where my mom is alone and 20 minutes away and I can't always get there fast enough if I'm traveling, it started to make even more sense. And I am giving her this unit. That's where this will end up. I tested it, I know what it does, and it's going to her house. One button, always charged, fridge stays on, lights stay on. She doesn't have to call me at 11 o'clock at night to ask what to do. That's the whole pitch for me. Jackery has a runtime calculator and description where you can sort of put in your specific appliances and see exactly how long this runs them. Worth doing before you buy. And if you've got someone in your life in a similar situation, you already know who I'm talking about. There are a lot of products in this category. Jackery's been a leader for a reason. I really like the fact that it is one touch, but really what sold me more than anything was the charge retention. I think that separates this from a lot of the competition. But again, you want to check it out, decide if the price is worth it for you is the only question you can answer. All the links you need though, way down below.